Hi! This video marks the start of our prosthetic tools exploration, where we'll be taking a closer look at each and every prosthetic tool, its modifications, history, and related items, if there are any. I really want to try and keep this video short and sweet, finally, so in each one we will discuss 2 prosthetic tools. After we've covered everything, we'll move on to upgrade materials. Today's theme is Shuriken and Firecracker. As usual, we'll quickly go over the disclaimers, legend, and sources. If it's not your first time around, feel free to skip ahead. Number 1. Use common sense. Please do not assume that I have access to some secret true knowledge. I'm just entertained by reading Sekiro in Japanese. My law theories are just theories, so treat them accordingly. Number 2. I am not a professional translator. I have never worked on localization. Yes, I will say that something is translated poorly and something is not, and it will be my personal point of view. Ultimately, my goal is to give you the information so you can see if the localization was good or not, whether something important was lost or not. My opinion is just that, and I choose to share it. Number 3. I am not an expert on Buddhism. I will leave links to the Buddhist terms that we will encounter so you can read more on your own if you're interested. As usual, the transcriptions I give do not follow all academic rules, and I don't think it's necessary. They're just here to represent the pronunciation in case you're curious. All sources I used for this research will be listed in the description box below, along with all the additional information that I referenced throughout the video, so you can read more if you're interested. There you will also find a link to my original blog post if you want to read it through. Well, before we start exploring prosthetic tools, we need to talk about the Shinobi Prosthetic. Its original name is Shinobi Gishu, Shinobi Artificial Arm. The original description says that mechanisms are attached to the fake bone, imitating a human one that serves as an axis. I actually find this section of the art book utterly fascinating. I never expected the Shinobi Prosthetic to be explained in such detail. There is everything you might want to know, pictures of all the mechanisms, how everything works, how things are attached to one another, and how exactly Wolf uses them. Incredible. You can't upgrade any prosthetic tools unless you have the mechanical barrel. The original name means a cylinder for mechanisms, and tutu also denotes a gun barrel. I think mechanical barrel is a great name for it. I wonder why Gyobu has the mechanical barrel. After Ishin prevented orangutan from becoming Shura and severed his arm, Dogen made him a new one, and the mechanical barrel was undoubtedly a part of it. Maybe as the flames of hatred started consuming the sculptor, he either surrendered the mechanical barrel or it was taken from him to make him less dangerous. The sculptor knows what the barrel is for, what shinobi tools are, so he had it at some point. Now when I think about how helpful the sculptor is with the prosthetic, how eagerly he explains everything, upgrades tools for you, gives you shinobi esoteric text as soon as you show up with your first ever skill point, I think the sculptor just wanted to make Wolf stronger so he would be able to kill him. When you get your shinobi prosthetic, turns out there is already one prosthetic tool installed, and it's your grappling hook. There isn't much said about it in the game, it has no upgrades and no separate description. At least I can tell you its original name, Kaginawa, literally a rope with a hook. Kaginawa is a type of grappling hook. It was widely used in feudal Japan, especially during sieges. Kaginawa has a number of configurations, from 1 to 4 hooks. Shuriken Wheel is called exactly that, Shuriken Wheel. The word shuriken itself literally means a concealed hand blade. This contraption was created by inventor Dogen. The description of the item is quite accurate. A surprising number of blades can fit into the wheel because it was designed for sacking. The last line is slightly different in the original. The technique that went into constructing such shinobi mechanisms allows one to put shinobi prosthetic to good use. The localized version of this line initially confused me because I thought that when one matches mechanical finesse with a shinobi's talent, implied that Dogen was also a shinobi. That's why he was so good at constructing these things. But later we learned that he was a genius, a doctor, but hardly a shinobi. However, he most certainly was the one who constructed the shinobi prosthetic in the first place. I wonder why that Naijar had the Shuriken Wheel. Naijar don't really use shurikens, they mostly fight with sickles and somersaults. When you fit the Shuriken Wheel into your shinobi prosthetic, you get loaded shuriken. The original calls it just simply shuriken. I'm not sure why loaded was added, but it doesn't hurt. Shuriken prosthetic tool has 5 upgrades, that's more than any other prosthetic tool. We'll look at all of them, and we'll also look at the pictures from the art book that show how all these things work. The original name for spinning shuriken is Koma Shuriken, where Koma means spinning top. The Shuriken upgrade path is basically to build as much momentum as you can so it spins faster and longer, and then throw into the mix some sharp edges so they will rip enemies into shreds. This is the first one of the bunch, and as the original says, it is enhanced by accumulating rotational energy. This is the first Shuriken upgrade that offers an alternate attack. You might have noticed that some prosthetic tools have a spring load upgrade like Spring Load Firecracker or Spring Load Flame Vent. This is the first spring load version of the Shuriken. The description uses the same word for the mechanism, bane, spring, that is used in the names of other prosthetic tools that have it. Gouging Top's original name is Tsuranouke Koma, piercing spinning top. This Shuriken is enhanced by sharp blades that pierce enemies. The last paragraph that describes how it works is identical to the spinning Shuriken because they both have a spring load mechanism and blades, but the last line is slightly different since Gouging Top has sharper blades. These sharp blades continue tearing enemies apart. We already discussed Phantom Kunai as an item when we talked about Lady Butterfly, so we won't dwell on it for too long. The original name of the prosthetic tool is exactly what you would expect, Maboroshi Kunai, Phantom Kunai. The localization is very accurate. Let's look at the Phantom Kunai page in the art book. This little line comments on how the kunai are arranged inside the wheel in such a fashion that their handle and blade parts stack. Sen Throw is a fun and weird modification for the Shuriken prosthetic tool. It reminds me a lot of the Flukeness charm from Hollow Knight, where your main spell transforms and deals a lot of damage but becomes incredibly short-ranged. Its original name is Zenitsubute, where Zeni denotes both a round coin with a square hole in the center and also Sen, and Tsubute means a stone used for throwing. I think Sen Throw is a great localization. Shoots a stack of coins in one go. If you look at the picture from the art book, it shows how exactly the coins are organized inside of the Shuriken Wheel. There is a rope that goes through the hole in the center of each coin and bundles all of them together. They're also loaded at slightly different angles and densities so the stack won't be too uniform, otherwise I'm guessing it will get stuck inside the wheel. The art book also depicts one of the coins as an example, a round coin with a square hole in the center. The little note says that there is the chromatic part, I'm guessing the darker inside of the coin, and also the polished outer part. If you're interested what the kanji on the coin say, I've got you. The vertical kanji are ashina, and the horizontal kanji when read right to left are tsuho, which means currency. Being rich makes the blast incredibly strong, but an empty purse will shoot nothing but dust. I really like the way they localized this sentence. The last part, on the other hand, if you're poor, nothing but dust will come out, has a really interesting detail. The original uses the word hokori that denotes dust, but also pride. Since there is only hiragana and no kanji, I think this is intentional wordplay. If you're poor, you have only your pride and no sen to use. Its original name is Ruri no Shuriken, where Ruri means lapis lazuli. This Shuriken upgrade features not just piercing edge, but literally Lazulite blades. The original compares the blue light to a comet. Otherwise, the description is pretty similar to Gouging Top, as this is technically the same construction with the spinning blades that continue damaging enemies after they strike, but here the blades are special and thus the damage is higher. That's all there is to discuss about the Shuriken prosthetic tool, so let's move on to the Firecracker. As we take a closer look at the Firecracker prosthetic tool, we'll try and unravel the story of little Robert and his father. The original name of Robert's Firecrackers is really straightforward. It's Robate no Bakuchiku, Robert's Firecrackers. The localization says that firecrackers come from across southern seas. The original says Nanban. This word refers to Nanban trade period that lasted from 1543 to 1615, and this time frame places it exactly into the Sengoku period where the events of Sekiro take place. The Nanban trade began with Portuguese explorers and merchants establishing trade routes with Japan. They introduced matchlock firearms, Christianity, and some of their customs. They also brought many products for sale, like, almonds. Thus, it's most likely that little Robert and his father come from Portugal. As the description states, firecrackers are used to generate a deafening sound, so the sparks you see are just a byproduct and not a goal. Little Robert and his father sold these to cover their traveling expenses. I wonder if the firecracker traps in Gunfort are also made of these firecrackers. The Gunfort folks certainly can fashion something like this themselves, but I'm still curious. Were they seeking the undying to prolong Robert's life? When you turn Robert's firecrackers into a prosthetic tool, it becomes Shinobi Firecracker. In Japanese, this tool is just called Bakuchiku Firecracker, but I suppose this word looked really lonely as a title. The localization is accurate, however, to describe the enemy reaction to the firecracker, the original uses the verb hirumu to recoil or to flinch from something. I think it better to use this tool than to blind because you startle the enemies with a deafening sound. Later, with subsequent upgrades, the firecracker will produce not only a loud sound, but also blooming sparks. However, for the time being, its main feature is sound. Next up, similarly to one of the Shuriken upgrades, we have the Spring-Load Firecracker, Bakuchiku Baneshiki, that introduces rotational energy into the prosthetic tool. This upgrade not only allows the firecracker to produce a louder sound, but also, finally, a flash of light. Interestingly enough, the verb hirumu that was translated as to blind in the previous description here takes on a more correct translation to recoil. Long Spark upgrade as well as Purple Fume Spark is achieved by introducing compound gunpowder and tweaking its ratio. The original name is beautiful, Nagahibana, literally Long Spark. Firecracker enhanced with an improved gunpowder combination. I think the last sentence should have mirrored the structure of the original, and it would sound much better that way. You want to draw attention to the flower metaphor and not to the fact that the blooming is short. For a short while, the flames of the firecrackers bloom. But that's just my opinion. The localization itself is as accurate as it can be. Purple Fume Spark is called Sien Hibana, where Sien literally translates to tobacco smoke or purple smoke. This upgrade is achieved by gunpowder arrangement that causes the purple smoke to rise up. The recipe includes a lump of fat wax, and we'll get to it later in upgrade materials. This is all there is to discuss about the Firecracker prosthetic tool and its upgrades. However, the story of little Robert and his father is not yet finished. Prayer necklaces constitute probably the most interesting item category. Not only do they allow you to increase your stats, but they also offer a lot of lore and story. Prayer beads are scattered across Ashina in such a curious fashion that, if you're attentive enough and gather all the beads in order, each necklace will give you a piece of lore on people, enemies, and areas that you have just interacted with. The original name of this item is Nenju, a string of prayer beads. They're all numbered, the first, the second, the third, and so on, up to the 10th necklace that is called Juzen, which means final, but also contains the 10 kanji because it's the 10th necklace. The one that tells us about Robert and his father is the 9th prayer necklace. We'll focus on the lore part of the description and we'll explore the item category itself in another video. Weird that the localization skipped the vital part of the original description that finally explains why Robert's father searched for the Undying and why he needed to extend Robert's life, to heal the illness of his son. They promised to give the blessing of rejuvenation, but for what? The localization translated it as repelling 1,000 blades. This part lacks a verb, so it is unclear what Robert's father needed to do with 1,000 blades, but his whole character and this very phrase is a clear reference to a Japanese warrior monk called Benkei. Benkei was a man of great strength, 2 meters tall, he wielded 7 weapons and led a very interesting life. At some point he was a monk, a mountain ascetic, a rogue warrior, and then he served Minamoto no Yoshitsune, a military commander of the Minamoto clan in the late Heian and early Kamakura periods. People speculated that Benkei was an offspring of a temple god, or he was a demon, at least half demon, or an ogre due to his towering height. Benkei was also known as a man on a personal quest to take 1,000 swords from samurai warriors that he believed to be arrogant and unworthy, and so he wandered around Kyoto dueling every samurai he thought undeserving of the title. 1,000 swords he aimed to collect in Japanese are called Senbon no Tachi. As you can see, the 1,000 blades in the prayer necklace description are written in a similar fashion. Anyway, Benkei collected 999 swords and was looking for the last one when he noticed a young man playing the flute at Gojo Tenjin Shrine. He carried a sword, and so Benkei challenged him. I have no clue why he thought the young man was arrogant or unworthy, but anyway, they dueled, not at the shrine but on Gojo Bridge, and Jan Benkei lost to this warrior who was much smaller than him. That warrior turned out to be Minamoto no Yoshitsune. Benkei did not accept his defeat and challenged the young man once again, but lost anyway. So he became Yoshitsune's retainer and fought alongside him till the day he died. Boys' friendship, am I right? There is a number of parallels between Armored Warrior and Benkei, for example their great height, the fact that they both lost to a much smaller warrior, and also the running theme of bridges. Benkei later died on a bridge trying to hold it to protect Yoshitsune. He didn't fall off of it though. And of course the 1,000 blades they both needed to collect. Benkei wanted to defeat 1,000 unworthy samurai, and for Armored Warrior it was more of an exchange. When he defeats 1,000 intruders that are trying to breach the Senpo Temple, the monks will give his son the blessing of rejuvenation. The thing is that the Senpo Temple is not really besieged, and there are not a lot of people who are trying to invade its grounds. Armored Warrior would be standing on that bridge for the next 200 years trying to collect a dozen of swords if that. Genichiro is in cahoots with the monks, Isshin does not command the Ashina troops any longer, the ministry is buying kende in bulk from the temple and making huge donation to further their research, and the guys from Misen are selling Gokan sugars to them wholesale. I think it was more of your son will get the blessing approximately never type of promise. They most likely just took Robert in for the experiments while his father continued standing guard on that bridge, unable to check back with them on how his son was doing. Robert was most likely already somewhere in a pile of children's bodies, and Armored Warrior never knew. He continued to believe that it was his responsibility to collect 1,000 swords from intruders and save his little son. What a tragic story. His Japanese name is very straightforward, Katsu Musa, literally Armored Warrior. In the next video, we'll continue exploring other prosthetic tools, their upgrades, and related items. I'm learning a whole bunch of new words because I wasn't really well versed in the mechanisms, gunpowder, and all the other stuff in Japanese, so that's always a good thing. Don't forget to check the description for a lot of links and more reading. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.